Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim, and this is another Real Ideal Gear review. Today we're looking at the Revelot Hexmariner 39 Army. This is a watch that I came across on an advertisement, and I saw the overall design of it and was just taken in by, I think, some of the color combinations that they have on this watch in particular, which is green, gold. It has a really good lume indices, hands, the red tip on the second hand, all of these different features that come together. And the thing about gold in watches for me, I don't like gold on the band at all. And if there's gold on the case or the dial or the bezel, it just needs to be accents or highlights. I'm not a big gold dial guy at all. I don't like gold bezels. I don't like gold bands or bracelets or straps or crowns or like it just needs to be accents, and to me, that's where this watch really fit in well. So let's take a look at this watch. We'll go through the 5 things that I commonly look at with a watch, which are size, fitment, finish, accuracy, and then legibility and lume kind of go together for number 5. And then I'll have some comments at the end. So starting off with size, this is a 39 millimeter, so this is a little smaller than the other dive watches that I have, and that was a curiosity that I had to going below the 400. Going below the 40 millimeter mark on my divers is something that I wanted to try. 39, not a huge difference, but it is a difference. So I tried it, and I do like it. I do like the size of the 39 millimeter size. It fits differently. In some ways, it fits a little bit better. In other ways, it's a little smaller. So we'll talk more about that with legibility and lume at the very end. It's a diver watch, so it has the diver weight to it. It has a heavier case, stainless steel case. It's got some mass to it, but it is an easy wearing watch. My wife, she tried it on as far as, it wasn't sized for her as far as the bracelet goes, but she tried the watch on. She likes the size. She just didn't like the gold accent and the diver style. She says it's a guy's watch. It's not a gal's watch. So, but she did like the size of the watch. The size of the crown is great. It's got a grippy texture to it, easy to grab. It's not like some other watches that have crown guards where it's more difficult to grab the crown. So the crown itself, the size of it, I think is a good size. As far as fitment goes, it's an easy watch to fit. You have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have 5 positions, which makes it 4 adjustments on the clasp for fine-tuning the size of the watch to your wrist, which I really like. I think that is the number that gets the watch to fit me the best, is when there are 4, at least 4. 5 is like the ideal number as far as positions go. Obviously, you end up with 4 adjustments. You don't end up with 5, you end up with 4 because one of them is being used all the time. So as far as fitment goes, it's great. It has a really excellent clasp. It has a pin link adjustment on the bracelet itself, so you just got to be careful when you take them out and put them back in the way that they're supposed to be put back in. They should be there shouldn't be an issue with that at all. It's a brushed bracelet, pretty much a brushed design all the way around. There's a little bit of polishing, chamfering on the edges of the case, which I actually like. It's a nice accent, but at the same time, you get a really good finish for a watch that, you wear it and it gets scratched up a little bit. It doesn't stand out as much with a brushed finish like that. But it does have some of those polished features that kind of go along with the gold gilting and accents on the bezel and in the hands and the indices and things like that. As far as the finish goes, this is where I think this watch does a great job. The dial is fantastic. So it's a Hexmariner, so everything in the dial has to do with the hexagon shape. Everything is 6-sided. The dial itself is textured with hexagons. The indices are hexagon shaped. The hour markers are fantastic. They're applied markers, but the 12, the 3, and the 9 are oblong hexagon shapes, which really help stand out as far as orienting and getting kind of a reference point on the dial itself. The 6 o'clock position is taken up by a date, which I like. I would prefer the date actually take up the 6 o'clock position. It just doesn't seem as crammed when it's done that way versus having the date above the 6 o'clock indice or to the inside of the 3 o'clock indice, that kind of thing. I think when it replaces one of those indices, I think it does a very good job of just kind of fitting in. The finish of the bezel is awesome. You've got the gold gilt on the hands, the second hand, hour hand, minute hand. You've got a little red tip on the end of the second hand with an illuminated pip on there. The theme of this watch is what really gets to me. And then you look at the bracelet, and the bracelet has these angular pieces to angular design features to the bracelet itself. You get this light play off the bracelet, which is great. I love that as well. There's a sapphire crystal, so as far as scratches go, you have a nice brushed case for the most part. You have a sapphire crystal. The watch really lends itself to being worn a lot, which I really like. Accuracy, it's an NH35 movement in here, so accuracy is not an issue as far as long term. I do think it's on the edge of needing to be regulated. So as far as accuracy goes, it's not quite as accurate as I'd like, but it's also not changing much either. And so one of the gives and take that I have is that I don't wear watches months at a time. I'll wear them maybe a week at a time, a number of days at a time for sure. So as far as accuracy goes, it's important to me because it's the mechanical part. I want the accuracy. I want that engineering to be, a well-tuned watch is really what I'm looking for. But as far as over the long term, I just don't wear a watch long term for that reason right now. So, but it may need to be regulated in the near future. This watch handled my pistol shooting. I'm a competitive pistol shooter. I'm also a former reserve deputy, and so shooting has been something that I've done for a long time. I reload and things like that. So when I took this watch out with a number of other watches to see how they handled the impact of shooting as one of the tests, it did a great job. No change on the time grapher at all. And so this kind of goes back to it may just need to be regulated, and then we're good to go. Legibility in lume, outstanding. The sacrifice you get when you go to a smaller dial is everything gets compressed. And so the contrast with this, maybe with my Hamilton khaki field chronograph watch or my Casio Pathfinder, some of those watches that have a much bigger dial, you have more space. So everything has a little bit more room to move. The accuracy, the level of accuracy that you have with the movement of the hands on the dial is much greater because it's just a bigger dial. So that's the only negative side of a 39 millimeter case with a smaller dial with a bezel as well. The bezel kind of constricts it even more. If it didn't have a bezel and the dial went out to the edge of the where the bezel would be, I think it would be a fantastic deal, but at the same time, it's not a dive watch at that point. It becomes a sport watch. So legibility in lume is great. The 12, 3, and 9 are different from the other indices. The red tip on the second hand is great. The gold gilting on the hands and the indices really help it stand out from the green dial itself. And there's so much light play off the dial that you get different shades of green, whether it's really light green because there's a lot of reflection or very deep green because there's virtually no reflection depending on the angle of the light. So those indices and the hands really do a good job of standing out. Water resistance is 200 meters, so no issues with water whatsoever. Swimming, bathing, even some scuba diving, snorkeling, it should be good to go. Awesome lume. The lume on this watch is really up there. It's well above average. It lasts all night. It's a lume that I can certainly read at 4 in the morning easily. There's lume on the bezel as well, the pip on the bezel, which has a red outline to it, which is great for indexing, making sure that you have that located. Typically for me it's at 12 o'clock, but I do time a lot of things during the summertime, and so I turn that bezel to time things because I bill customers based on how much time I spend at a site. So that is nice to have. Low light conditions, outstanding legibility in lume. The date window is good. It's a little narrow, but at the same time it works, and I especially like the position of it that it's on the 6. Let's see. This, as far as the overall look of the watch, this is about as blingy of a watch as I'm going to get. And I look at this like, to me, this is a watch that stands out in my mind. Maybe other people don't notice it as much as I do. But because of the reflective nature of gold, it kind of stands out that way. But the overall theme of this watch, the hex shapes throughout this dial, I can't emphasize that enough. It's awesome. So uses for this watch, it may not be used as much for work as I'd probably use other watches just because it has kind of that dressier, blingy type look to it. But at the same time, sapphire crystal, brushed case, brushed bracelet, I have no problem wearing it. There's a display case back in the back. I have to say something about that too because it's the display case back, like you can't see anything. It has a design on it, but you can't really see through the design into the rotor and the escapement wheel and all that. So it's kind of a different deal that they have a display case back that you can't really see through. It's almost like a lattice, a hexagon lattice over the display case window. So, but it's certainly something that I would wear working for light duty type stuff, lawn mowing, maybe even doing shrubs, those kind of things. No issues with wearing this whatsoever. It'll handle it just fine. And like I said, it handled the pistol shooting part of it, so even light impact type work, power tools, gas powered tools, I think would be just fine. The smaller diameter case, and also being a dive watch, it has this proportion on your wrist where it looks like it's taller than other dive watches because it's a little smaller case, but it has pretty much the same height off the wrist. So proportionally, it looks taller than it actually is. But it's pretty much the standard height for a diver. It's nothing really overly tall off the wrist. So no extra concerns as far as snagability on other things. So overall in this watch, I'd give this watch a 9, maybe a 9.3 out of 10. There is so much to love about this watch. The size gets to me a little bit, but 9.5 overall. That's the score I'm going with, and it's a great watch. As far as value goes, if you go to the Revelot website, you're going to pay well under $400 for this watch, and I think it's right around $350, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's been a while since I made the purchase, so as far as value goes, it's a great value watch. So again, 9.5 out of 10. And if you have any comments or questions about this watch or any ideas for future videos, please let me know. I do answer questions and comments that show up on the comment section, so have no fear. I will be there to reply back. So my name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear Review, and you guys take care.